Hello and welcome back to another lesson on learning Wagtail. In this lesson, we are going to tackle something pretty big, and there are different ways to do it, and we are going to learn a single way to do it. It's not the best way, it's not the worst way, it is a way to do this. And today we're talking about menus, creating a menu system. And in fact, in this video, we're actually going to go over a lot of different things. So we're going to start off by creating a clusterable model to actually make our menu. And then we're going to use a series of orderables, or actually we're going to use one orderable, but we're going to use it over and over and over again to create those menu items. And then we're going to use a page chooser panel mixed with a series of regular Django model fields to basically add our URLs, add our titles, things like that. We're going to add a couple extra properties to our menu items so that we can perform logic inside of our view instead of inside of the template. It just keeps our templates nice and clean. And then we're going to create a simple template tag, and that template tag is going to allow us to get our menu item based on a slug so that we can loop through it in our template. And then lastly, we're going to loop through it in our template. So 6 major points to go over there. And again, this is going to sound like a lot. It really isn't, but at any point in time, if I lose you in this video, you can always find the source code on github.com/codingforeverybody/learn-wagtail. I'll leave all the links to all that good stuff and any sort of documentation in the description down below. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open up my terminal here and let's go into my websites, my site, enter my environment. And the first thing I need to do is, because this is going to be a relatively large system, I want to separate this out from other applications. Because if I was to put my menu system, or you were to put your menu system into, let's say, your homepage application, your homepage app, or your blog, or your Flex, or anything like that, that just doesn't really make sense to have one menu system in there that covers the entire site, even though it's living in home. So let's go ahead and make our own app. So we do Python 3 manage.py start app, and let's call this menus. Menus. And then we need to open up base.py, and where we have installed apps, let's go ahead and install menus. And let's run our server. Python 3 manage.py run server. Things are okay, it's not complaining about anything, so that's good news. I'm going to close down base.py because that's not needed for the majority of this lesson. And let's open up menus. And let's go into models.py. So you can see that there's absolutely nothing in here at this point. We do actually need that first import. Occasionally we don't need it, sometimes we do need it. In this scenario, we do need it. So let's call this our menus models. Now we're going to be creating primarily 2 classes in here, and we're going to register one of them as a snippet. Now one of them we have not dealt with if you've been following this entire course so far. That's the clusterable model. We have not used that yet. We're going to get into that a little bit in this lesson. And I'm going to show you how to use Django extensions autoslug field. If you don't want to use Django extensions, I will give you an alternative way to get around that. It's just something that's really, really nice and works just out of the box with Wagtail too. So let's do some pseudocoding here. So our first class needs to be some sort of menu item, and a second class needs to be some sort of menu to contain all those menu items. Now this menu item, these need to be orderable. They need to be able to move up and down, left and right, because sometimes we want to change the location of our menu items. And because it needs to be orderable, it will be an orderable. And our menu here, this is where it gets a little bit trickier because we haven't really dealt with this yet, but this one is going to be a clusterable model. So before we can have menu items, we should actually build out our menu. Now, the order of this does not really matter in my opinion, so let's just go ahead and create that menu first because you can't have menu items without a menu, just like at a restaurant. The main menu clusterable model. I know that's a terrible doc string, but you know what? We're going to have to live with that for now. And in here, we really just need, I guess we just need 2 fields. We need a title field and we need a slug field. The slug field is because In the template, eventually we're going to be able to grab this menu using a template tag, and we want to be able to grab it based on a slug, not an ID. IDs can change if you reinstall a website. A slug is at least manageable, it's editable, it's changeable. And a title is just what we're going to call it. So the title is going to be a char field, max length, give it 100, it doesn't need to be very long. And the slug field is going to be an auto slug field, populate from title, and editable is true. Now, if you're wondering, what is that? That is basically it's our alternative to using slug is equal to models dot slug field. That's it. The only difference is that as soon as we start typing into our title, it's going to also auto-populate our slug, so we don't have to type it twice. It's quite nice. Now let's go ahead and import this one. So let's go back to the top of our file. Let us import it from Django extensions.db.fields. Nope, fields, import, autoslug field. There it is. Okay, so we have our autoslug field in there, and I'm going to leave this one in the code in case you don't want to use the autoslug field from Django extensions. Instead, what you could possibly do is you could just use this slug field instead of this. So just comment this line out, uncomment that one, and you're good to go. You could additionally use a char field or anything else. I just like the autoslug field just because it does some extra typing that I don't have to do. And at the end of the day, your client doesn't have to do it either. Okay, because we want this to show up in Wagtail, we want this to be editable in Wagtail. Like anything, this has panels. Panels is equal to, and it just takes a list. So let me scroll that down here for you so you can see it. And we want three, actually. We want 3 panels. We want a multi-field panel so that we can group them together. And we want an inline panel so that we can use our orderables. Now, if you're unsure about orderables or inline panels or anything like that, you might want to go back to the lesson about orderables. We really cover it, I think, thoroughly in detail about how they work, what they are. And they've actually come up several times in several other lessons, and they're going to come up in your Wagtail projects. So you might as well be familiar with them. If you're not familiar with an orderable, please take the time now to go and get familiar with an orderable. Now I'm going to add a multi-field panel. And this takes a list. I'm just going to sort of hash this out a little bit. So we have a field panel in here, and this one's going to be for our title. And we have another field panel in here, and this one's going to be for our slug, because we said it's editable, so let's make it editable. Heading is going to be, just call it menu. And then let's create another panel in here, an inline panel for our menu items, which we have not created at this point. This menu items, this relationship, is not existent yet. So if you're wondering where that's coming from, just hang tight. We're going to get to that very, very shortly. These two classes, the menu and the menu item, can't really exist without each other. So we should, well, I mean, they could exist without each other, but they'd be pointless. So what we're going to do is we're going to build them basically at the exact same time. And this one's just going to be a label called menu item, something like that. So now we have some panels in here. And lastly, we need to give it a string. So def dunder string, always take self, and return self.title. And this just gives our menu some sort of title. So we need to do 2 more things here. Let's go ahead and register this as a snippet. So register _ snippet. Previously, I've used this as a function, but you can also use it as a decorator because that's essentially all a decorator is a function that wraps another function. And now let's go ahead and do some more imports. So we need to import our multi-field panel, field panel, inline panel, and register snippet. So let's go up here and let's import all that good stuff right now. Let's import our panels first. So let's do from wagtail.admin.edit handlers import, and make this a multi-line import. So we've got a multi-field panel. We also have an inline panel, and we have a field panel. And then we need to import our snippet decorator. So we do from wagtail.snippets.models import register snippet. Put those together. And doesn't look like there's any other complaints at the moment. So let's go ahead and build out our menu item. And just so you know, when you open up your terminal, you're going to get some sort of error at this point. In this case, this one is saying that it's expected an indented block. And that's because, so we can fix that by adding pass in there. Name orderable is not defined. Okay, so that's good. That's good. We're still making progress there. So let's actually ignore that orderable import because let's do some imports altogether. But in this menu item, we need to think about what we're actually adding here. So in this menu item, we need to have a link title or some sort of text. We need to have a link URL, possibly an external URL. We're going to need a link page to link to some sort of Wagtail page if we want to link internally. And I think we're going to give them the option to open in a new tab as well. So for example, when you're reading any website that has documentation, so some sort of technical IT kind of website, and they have docs, they'll usually have a button in their header or in their navigation that says documentation or docs or read the docs, and it opens up in a new window or a new tab. That's what we're going to give people the option to add. So let's kind of pseudocode this. We need our link title, and then we need a link URL. So that's going to be external. We need a link page. This is going to be internal because pages are always internal. At least in the world that I live in, pages are internal. And then open in new tab. So we know that this is going to be, this one is going to be models.char field. We'll fill this out in just a moment. This one is going to be models.url field. A link page is going to be a foreign key because we want the page chooser panel. So we've actually done this one before. Let's create a foreign key to a Wagtail page, and then we're going to give it a page chooser panel, which we'll import a little bit later. And then that gives us a nice little wrapper in the Wagtail admin to just click different pages that we can select. So let's add the foreign key. We'll fill that out later. And open in a new tab. Yes or no, it's a Boolean. So models.boolean field. Now we need one more in here. We need some sort of parental key. This is going to actually make our orderable attached to a clusterable model. So let's go ahead and add that now. We have page is equal to a parental key. It's going to link to not many. And this is where we get that related name that I said, oh, we don't have that yet, but we're going to build it now. So we have a related name is equal to menu items. And this related name, you can see, is going to be used in our inline panel. And that just says to Wagtail, basically take this orderable and let us have as many as we want. Now, like all things Wagtail, we need a panel, or we need panels rather. So panels is going to be a list, and we need a field panel for our link title. We need a field panel for our link URL. We need a page chooser panel for our link page so that people can nicely select a page inside of Wagtail. And we also want a field panel for our Boolean, which is open in new tab. And there we have our panels. Next, we're going to add some properties. So let's add a property. We can do this in a little bit. So let's do add properties. And we're going to add one for a link. So we're going to add some logic in here. Is it an external URL? Is it an internal URL? It's going to be one of those two. And it's going to return that link. And also we're going to add another one in here for title, because we are going to make this link title optional so that if there is no title provided and there is a link page, we can get the title of that page instead. So we're being a little bit clever here. This can get a little bit costly in queries, and I shouldn't really say costly, but it can definitely add up just because instead of having a link title, it now has to grab your link page, and in that link page has to go and grab that title. Again, it's not a big deal, but these little queries, they can add up, and all of a sudden you'll have 200 per page, and that's getting to be really, really high. So our link title, let's make this one blank is equal to true. Null is equal to true. And let's give it a max length of 50. Our URL field. You know what? I'm actually going to change that. This is not going to be a URL field. And the reason that I'm going to change this from a URL field to a car field or a char field is because a URL field is going to request that your URL starts with http://. Now, if you're a content entry person and you're somewhat familiar with how relativity works in terms of website URLs, you might not want to do that. You might just want to go /contact, or if you have a single page website, you might even just want to throw a hash in there. So the hash could be contact, and that will move the person down the page. So we're kind of gonna kill two birds with one stone with this one. Alternatively, if you don't like the solution, you can go back to using a URL field, and you can have a link hash is equal to models.char field, and then you can have some sort of hash in there. If that's the way you want to do it, that's the way you want to do it. That's cool. The way I'm going to do it is using a char field. So this char field is going to have a max length of, no, let's do 500 because some URLs can get pretty long, especially like affiliate links. Blank is equal to true. Okay, we have a link page. This one is our foreign key. So this one takes a few more parameters. So what are we going to link to? We want to link to the Wagtail core.page. So the Wagtail core, this guy here, this is your Wagtail app. And this is your Wagtail model. Or I guess this one doesn't have to be a Wagtail model. This one just has to be a model. And this one is your app. And so we're just saying grab any Wagtail page. Now, if we wanted to get specific and we could only ever grab certain types of pages, we could do like blog detail page. And that will only allow us to select blog detail pages. We want to be able to select any page on our site because we're building a global menu. Null is equal to true. True. Blank is equal to true. Related name doesn't matter because we're not using it. On delete is equal to models.set null. So what happens when you delete the page that this is linked to? We could set this to null, or we could cascade it, and open in new tab. Open in new tab. This one is going to have a default. Default is, nope, that is default. There we go. Shouting it before. Default. Default is going to be false. Blank is equal to true. I'm not getting too picky about those, by the way. I'm just basically hashing this out. There's always room for optimization in everything, including everything that you are learning here. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and I see that there are a couple errors in here. So let's go and import our import. So we need to import orderable. We have our models in here. We need to import parental key, and we need to import page chooser panel. So let's go and import our orderable. And that is going to come from, where do I want to put that? From here. From wagtail.core.models import orderable. Fun fact, this is also where page comes from. So whenever you're creating a new page, a home page, blog page, anything like that, it comes from the exact same place. So that one's nice and memorable. We also need our page chooser panel. So page chooser panel. And we had one more in here, right? We had the parental key. And that parental key is going to come from model cluster. So let's put this down a line. From model cluster.fields import parental key. And I don't think we did it yet. So yeah, this one also needs to be imported. Clusterable model. You probably caught that one. If you did, good eye. From model cluster.models import clusterable model. And let's see what we have to fix. Nothing! We did it all properly. So that is fantastic news. Okay, so we have our models in here. So let's make this a little bit smaller so that you can see this. If you're on a mobile device, if you're on your phone watching this, I apologize. This is probably a little bit small to see, but let's quickly run through this. So we're importing from Django, and we're just importing models. From Django extensions, we're using the autoslug field. Instead of the autoslug field, you could just use a regular slug field. If you don't want to have another package installed, that's totally cool. Model cluster, this is installed with Wagtail, and we are importing the parental key and clusterable model. And that allows us to basically create pages that, or not pages, but models that connect to each other. Then we're importing some handlers. So we've got a multi-field panel, inline panel, field panel, page chooser panel. And so these are just how, whenever you add a panel, basically you're saying in the Wagtail admin in the CMS, make a certain field editable. And in this case, the page chooser panel is actually really, really nice, just because this one actually gives you a nice little wrapper. So you can point and click and find and search and just select a page instead of having to type it out. It's really nice, especially for people who are a little less tech savvy. And then we are importing our orderable, and we are importing a snippet, a register snippet rather, and then we're going to create a menu item. We've got a bunch of stuff in here, so we've got some fields. We're going to add some properties in there, and then we have, we basically just have our menu in here, our clusterable model, and this allows us to set a title, slug, and menu items. Okay, so everything seems okay in there. So what I'm going to do now is Python 3 manage.py make migrations. Okay, so it says created model. It says create model menu items. Python 3 manage.py migrate. Everything went smooth. Let's run our server once more. So if you boot up localhost port 8000/admin and you hop on over to your snippets, you'll see that there's a new one in here called menus. And we've worked with snippets before. As you can see, we actually have snippets in here, blog authors, blog categories. We've worked with orderables before. We've worked with page chooser panels before. So there's only one thing that's really brand new to us at this point, and that's that clusterable model. And that clusterable model just allows us to have a nice little page like this. So we can have a title in here, and let's call this main navigation. That auto slug field, you can see how it's typing for me. So anything I type in here is automatically filled. So we can have that in there. I'm actually just going to call this one main. I don't really like them to get too long. And then we can add some menu items in here. We can add as many as we like. So we have our link title, link URL, link page, and open in new tab. So our link title, what do we want this to be? This is going to be what the text is. It should maybe actually be called link text, but let's stick with link title for now. Let's call this one cool. No, let's call this one super cool blog. And the link URL, this is why we didn't make this a URL field, is because we could just do /blog and go straight to it. We could do /blog detail page. We could also really mess it up and have a typo in there so that this doesn't actually work. But let's go ahead and create a link page, or not create one, but let's select one. So let's just select our blog. And that's what that nice page chooser panel does. Open a new tab. No, let's not open a new tab. Let's create a new one for, maybe let's call this one documentation. Documentation. And this one's going to go to https readthedocs.io. And that's going to open in a new tab. All right, so that's saved. Let's head on over to our website and we'll see that nothing has changed at all. We have a regular menu in here. How big can I make this without it going into mobile? So we have a regular menu, home, blog, and about. We actually want to completely replace this. So if we open up our base.html, we actually have in here our menu. So we've got home, blog, and about. Now what we want to do is we want to grab our menu item and we want to be able to loop through all the different items in it. And currently we have no way to do that. So we have a couple ways that we're able to get around this. One is we could throw our menu items into a global context processor. And that will mean that on every page, even in your Wagtail admin, even in Ajax requests, it's going to query your database every single time for that menu. So caching is important there. A way I like to get around that so that you don't necessarily need to use caching right away, although caching is always a good idea to speed up your website, is you can use a template tag. And so the template tag will say, basically, only ever get these menu items if there is a template being rendered here. If that template is being rendered, in this case, if base.html is ever being used. So we can go ahead and we can load menus tags. We haven't created this. This is a template tag file called menus_tags.py. And let's go ahead and create that now. So let's create a new file. We're going to create a folder called template tags and a new file called menus_tags.py. And in here, we're going to actually register our template tag. So a template tag is actually super easy. The one we're going to be working with is actually the easiest. It's a simple tag. So all we need to do is from Django import template, from ..models, we want to go up a level, import menu. If you're wondering where did I get that from, then you can actually see in our template tags here, we've got our menus tags.py. And if we go up a level, we have models.py. So 1 dot means you are in the same directory. 2 dots means go up 1 directory. We're going to import that menu. And then we need to create a registry. So register is equal to template.library. And let's register a snippet. So register, not snippet, or template tag. This just takes a function. That's all this is. So let's call this one get menu. And it's going to take 1 parameter, not a slug, a slug. And it's going to return menu.objects. Objects, I can't spell anything correctly today. Get slug is equal to slug. So earlier when we created this menu and there's a slug in here, this is exactly why. So we can now have this slug be accessed in our template tag. Now we're going to do a little bit of traversing in here. And I'm going to do my best to explain how that works. So let's create a new menu in here. And this menu is going to be get menu, main as menu. Now, to explain this a little bit, if you're brand new with template tags, basically your load will load a file. So we're loading a file called menus tags. And that comes from, close up some of this stuff. That comes from our template tags file. Oh, these all have to be in a template tags directory, by the way. And it's just called menus tags.py. So in Python, we usually ignore the .py. So we just say, oh, load menus tags. Inside of that menus tags, we have a function in here called get menu. And that's what we're calling here. And it takes 1 parameter. That parameter is our slug. And this one is saying, oh, just pass in main as our slug. So main is our slug is going to try to get all our menu objects with a slug of main. And then we're assigning it a variable called menu. Or actually, let's call it navigation. Now, if you're wondering where I got main from, main comes from this slug in here. Not the title, it just happens to be that the title is called the same thing, but this one, if this had a space, so main nav, this would be main dash nav. And then we would change this to main dash nav. So that's all we would do there. And then all we have to do is we have to loop through our menu items. We have to loop through the orderable technically. So let's leave home where it is because I like us having a home page. And let's loop through all of these. So let's loop through the item for item in navigation.menuitems.all. I'll explain that in just a moment. And for. So navigation comes from up here. We assigned it a variable to use inside of our template. We have menu items. Where did menu items come from? Well, in our template tag, so we have navigation here, right? Calling this get function. Get menu function is calling menu. Menu is over here. And inside of menu, we have an inline panel called menu items. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. And for a lot of people, this is a real turnoff because you actually have to do quite a bit of traversing sort of through your entire application, not just through Python, but through Python and templates, and also template tags, which is Python, in order to get these items. But once it's all said and done, life gets really, really easy. And all we're going to do here is simply loop through these items. So we've got a list item in there, we've got a link in here, and we have some sort of title and a link. So I'm going to get rid of these other ones in here just as an example. As expected, okay, this one throws me off quite a bit. I always run into this one. Menus tags is not a registered library. It must be one of basically any of these. Okay, so the way we get around this is super easy. In your terminal, hit cancel, rerun your server, and then refresh your page, and this will work for us. The reason that happens is because Django doesn't often restart just because you've added a template tag. In fact, I believe, I don't know this for certain, but I believe template tags are loaded as soon as Django runs or as soon as your Python instance starts running. And then you just need to give it a little bit of a kick and it says, oh, there's a new file. I'm going to go and pick up on that. Now, if we look up here, it doesn't look like there's anything there, but if we select all, you can sort of see in there. It's going to be very hard to see, especially if you're on a phone, but it says title and title. So let's go ahead and add a class in here so that we can actually even see this, nav link. There we go. We've got title and title. Now, at this point, that doesn't matter what those are. We just need to know that we have 2 items to loop through and it is showing 2. So we're on the right track. That is good news. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add some logic inside of our menu item. And where I said to do add properties, let's get rid of that. And let's add some properties in here. Now, the idea is that we're going to check for a link. So if there's a link page, use that. Otherwise, if there's a link URL, use that one. So let's go ahead and create a property. Use the decorator at property def, and let's call this one, and we'll call this one just link. And it takes self. And all it's going to do is return back either this page's URL or this text. So let's do if self.link page. So if there is a Wagtail page that's chosen, return self.link page.url. Elif self.link URL, return self.link URL. And lastly, we can always return something blank. And if you wanted to, you could do a little bit of type hinting here. And you're just basically saying that this is always going to return a string, if you wanted to get into that. So that's our one property. Let's go ahead and add a title in here. So our title is basically going to check to see if there is a title, because this is optional. And if there's not a title, it's going to try to use the link page title. At property def title takes self because it's object-oriented programming in Python. And so let's do if self.link page and not self.link title. So if there's a link page, but there's not a link title, return self.link page title. Otherwise, always return self.link title. There's actually a flaw there because that link title is optional. So we don't want that. Let's do elif return self.link title. There we go. And lastly, let's return missing title. And that one should hopefully get your attention when you're testing out your site and it says missing title and you go, oh, okay. Well, there's obviously a missing title in there. Let's give that a save. Let's check, make sure there's no problems. Okay, that's good. And let's go back into our header. And all we're going to do here for our link is item.link, and the title is going to be item.title. Look at that, super cool blog. If I click it, it goes to the blog. And if I click on documentation, it's going to go to readthedocs.io. We have one more thing to add in here. We need to make sure that this opens up in a new tab. So we can do if item.in new tab. So if item.open in new tab is true, we simply do target blank and if. Refresh our page and let's click on documentation, and this is going to open up readthedocs.io in a brand new tab, just like that. And that is all she wrote. So that is how we create a navigation system, a menu system inside of Wagtail using snippets. We used clusterable model. We used orderables. We used a parental key. We used a bunch of different fields. So all of our work to get to this point is really starting to pay off. Now, if at any point in time you wanted to extend this and you wanted to get a footer, you could simply do this as footer menu. Doesn't matter what this one is. That's just going to be using your template, and you'd loop through these as well. And then in your admin, you go into your snippets, go into your menus, add a new menu, and you'd call this one footer. And that slug, this one, lowercase, would match this one. And then you could loop through all of those as well. And even if you wanted to create some sort of mega menu, you could do the same thing. You could use get menu on all of these different ones. Now there's a better way to build mega menus, but that is a really great way to do that. Now, if you wanted to use this in order to create some sort of mega menu to get all sorts of menu items, absolutely, you could do that. Your queries are definitely going to add up, but in a mega menu, guess what? Your queries are adding up anyways. Now, there is obviously a better way to create some sort of mega menu, and there's actually an even easier way to create a menu than doing all of this. And there's a package called Wagtail Menus. So if you go to github.com/rkhlakes, I have no idea how to say that one, but it's Wagtail Menus, so just Google Wagtail Menus. You'll find this beautiful, beautiful project, has almost 1,000 commits at this point in time, and it's actually really nice. I tried this out quite a while ago. I also tried it out last night just to make sure that I could still recommend this to you. And in fact, it does work with Wagtail 2.4, Python 3.7, which is what I'm currently using. And if you want to see some sort of documentation, they have pretty good docs actually. So installing your Wagtail system, managing your menus, your different types of menus, that goes over what it all is, how it all works. So it basically builds out your menu system for you so you don't have to write out a menu system the way we did it. And I believe behind the scenes, it's very, very similar to how we did it today. I'll also drop the link to this repo in the description down below. You can also find the entire Git commit in the description down below. All right, so that's all she wrote for this lesson. My name is Caleb Tallien. I'm the voice behind the videos. I hope you learned a lot. I know we went through a lot of different things in here, but you can always check out the code in the repository. So I'm going to leave the commit link down in the description below. If at any point in time I did not go into enough detail about anything, you can always check out docs.wagtail.io or the model cluster GitHub repo. I'm sure they have a ton of documentation on there as well. It's been a little while since I've checked that one out. And for more videos much like this or other tutorials, you can always check out learnwagtail.com. All of these videos are available for free on learnwagtail.com. And if there's anything that you did not understand in this lesson, for example, orderables or snippets, then you can always head on over to learnwagtail.com to learn more about them. I have videos on everything that we have learned about up until this point.